Some of the filings that companies make with the SEC are required to be in plain English. Some aren't. Does it matter? Today on zippypoint. I'm Brock Romanek, and I'm a big fan of use. Plain English, one of my favorite topics, the usability of disclosure. So this recent study from Labrador and BVA extolling the benefits of plain language as compared to ordinary language is based on surveying real people. And the study reveals that plain language leads to fast reading, quick understanding, and better message retention, thus saving time and making sure that the reader really understands the key messages that someone is trying to get across. And these three things lead to the author being well received and the masses wanting more from that particular author. Clarity creates preference. So like I said, I'm a big fan of usability. How easy is it for an investor or shareholder to use a disclosure document? How readable is it? Does it easily convey what is going on? Here are 5 things about the plain English movement that you should know. 1, plain English was quasi-controversial when it first came out. 2, plain English isn't required for all SEC filings. 3, write like you talk. 4, the SEC's rules ain't in plain English. And 5, academics almost never write in plain English. 1, plain English was quasi-controversial. So first is the history lesson. When the SEC adopted the plain English rules in 1998, Rule 421D of Regulation C, it truly was a sea change in how disclosure lawyers had to write. There were classes taught by the SEC, Nancy Smith, Kerry Miller, Marty Dunn, they all went out to the various parts of the country to teach people how to write, teach disclosure lawyers how to write. There was a plain English handbook from the SEC that came out. Then 18 months after the plain English rules were put out, a staff legal bulletin was put out after the SEC, the corporate staff had issued many comments on disclosure documents that they have reviewed. So people really needed to have their hand held. It wasn't controversial in the traditional sense. There were only 45 comment letters written in on the plain English rule proposal. For example, the ABA, the American Bar Association, wanted a voluntary approach rather than mandatory due to liability concerns. But 75 companies had already participated in a pilot program and the sky hadn't fallen in. Plus, how can you be against plain English? It's just common sense. But it really was a big deal, and it forced many of us, including me, to have a new mindset. It was an adjustment, a change in the way we wrote, our style, which is really all kind of crazy when you think about it, because we are disclosure lawyers. We should be experts in all manners of putting pen to paper, and it should be able to switch on a dime. We shouldn't need proxy designers today still to get the best out of our disclosure, but we still do, sadly. Anyway, I wonder how many young folks out there have read the SEC's Plain English Handbook or have even heard of it. Let me know. 2, plain English isn't required for all SEC filings. So isn't this the strangest? The plain English rules are only required for prospectuses to be put in plain English. The original rules in 1998 only targeted 33 Act filings. In 2006, when the executive pay rules were reformed, that rulemaking did require that compensation disclosures in the proxy be put in plain English. So interestingly, 34 Act reports outside of the paid disclosures and proxies aren't required to be put in plain English. So when I went in-house to Lockheed Martin in early 1999, I put the company's 10K in plain English without asking anyone. I was naive and didn't even think twice about it. I'd just been at the SEC while the plain English movement came to the fore, and it just seemed like the right thing to do. People were not happy inside the company. They liked being called the corporation instead of we in the 10K. And Lockheed Martin's 10K still refers to we. And I've looked at other 10Ks and a lot of other companies refer to themselves as the company or the corporation still 20 years later. 3, write like you talk. So my biggest advice for anyone seeking to make something more readable is to have them ask a layperson, someone not familiar with the topic, to read what they just wrote and see if they can understand it. My second piece of advice is to write like you talk, because we tend to talk in a style that makes it easier for others to understand us. We use less jargon, simpler, clearer sentences, all that kind of thing. Of course, when you're writing a disclosure document to be filed with the SEC, a big purpose for it is that it's a compliance document. It may even be considered the primary purpose for that document. It's a compliance document. So the disclosure can't be misleading or incomplete. It has to be fulsome. So you have to balance that against writing like you talk. But surely you can write your blogs, your law firm memos in a way that shows you're human, that you're trying to connect. And I have a Vid-Guide about that. Of course, I don't always follow my own advice. I haven't shown many of my videos in draft form around to that many people. Maybe I mumble too much, go too fast. It happens. We often don't follow the advice that we give others. 4, the SEC rules ain't in plain English. If I could be king for a day at the SEC, I would put all of the SEC's rules and regulations in plain English. It's mind-blowing how difficult it is to understand what they say. It's so hard to comprehend what they want you to do, how to comply with them. Only Rule 14A8, the shareholder proposal rule, is truly written in plain English. So many of the rules and regulations are really hard to grasp because the framework reads like it's in Greek. And then I'll take this a step further and note that some of the SEC's rules don't really elicit disclosure that makes common sense. For example, the whole Form 4 thing, it makes me chuckle. It forces companies, well, it's really the insider's responsibility, to file that form, to report their trades, to disclose all this data. But there isn't a requirement for a one-sentence explanation of what's truly going on. Why was this transaction made that required the form to be filled out in the first place? You have to make an educated guess about what that's all about. And Form 4's one of their purposes these days is to signal to the market whether the insider believes in the company or not that it's a part of. And if it's a transaction in which there was a willful decision to be made, it would be good if the market knew that. Or was it a transaction that happened on autopilot that did not require the insiders to make an investment decision? 5, academics almost never write in plain English. So I'm going to wrap up here with one of the funniest things for me is that academics are terrible at conveying their message. They're just terrible. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So, for example, this 2009 plain English study analyzing whether Form 10Ks have improved their readability over time and whether that matters isn't really written in plain English itself. Academics just tend to be the worst offenders of not writing in plain English. The bulk of the studies out there are nearly impossible to parse. It drives me crazy. I wonder why that is. I don't know. Is it snobbery? I doubt it. Trying to show off? Maybe. I think it's just because that's the way it's always been done, so the other professors do it. I can never really wrap my head around why professors perpetuate this practice. Anyway, if you want to read about official barometers or whether a document is in plain English, there are hundreds of readability measures according to this plain English study. But this plain English study focuses on 3 of them: the FOG index, the Flesch reading ease score, and a measure derived from the SEC's original plain English initiative. I should mention that I have a horde of Vid-Guides about proxy design, making your proxy more usable. You can find those up on zippypoint.com or search YouTube with the hashtags of #proxydesign and #zippypoint. Anyways, let me know what you think.